Oh, may we be worthy of our forefathers. Today we spoke to none other, Dr. Ian Lambert, principal of Scots College, one of the most prestigious private schools in the whole of Australia.
We're a boys' school. We love boys. We champion the cause of boys. We think boys are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? It's our job to honour them and to set them up for life. That's what we're doing. You know, I loved your mum and dad first time I met them, just their energy and their passion for boys. We're not only focused on academic outcomes. We are focused on the spirit, the heart, the character. I'm not focused on winning. I'm focused on being the most competitive you can be at any moment in time.
We sat down with a thrilling conversation on the life, the vision of this principal, how he built a reality within his mind in a day and age where young men are failing more than ever.
When you don't keep boys focused on striving for excellence, then they'll strive for whatever standard you set. We don't talk about punishment here, we talk about consequences.
We're living in a day and age where people want to coddle people, but that's actually making things worse, right? We're losing that masculine essence to be in there, to have your principles, morals, values, and stand by.
This is an interview you do not want to miss. How to be a fine young man, how to be a revolutionary, how to be the student that changes lives.
It's about trying to teach discipline, structure, success in the small things, and then you build on that to get success in the big things.
You were about to watch an exclusive interview with the none other Dr. Ian Lambert, Scots to the fore.
Welcome to the Rubasha Family Podcast. Now, we are here for a very, very special interview. We're here at Scots College, Sydney, Australia's oldest and most esteemed Presbyterian private schools. Now, the motto here is Alternum Patribus Nostris Digni Simus. And that means, oh, that we may be worthy of our forefathers. And that is what life is all about. That is why we are here. This is about legacy. We are here in Aspinall House, where your father attended, where you, starting from a farm, had a vision to create something within your mind. You know, there's very few visionaries in life who can project their vision onto other people, Your leadership style, your innovation, the athleticism, the way you're able to see. I'm not thinking of these students now, but I'm thinking for them 15 years from now, 20 years from now. That is your legacy. So I'm here with the one and only Dr. Ian Lambert, and we're here to get your story. How, as a CEO, as a leader in education, empowering the Indigenous, everything you've done has always been about being worthy of our forefathers. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to catch up. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So I always say, let's take it all the way back. Where are you from? You know, tell us how childhood was for you.
Yeah, I've had quite a diverse background in that I was actually born in Melbourne my parents on a sort of working a couple of years down there, and but really Sydney based. So my mother was from Hunters Hill, my father from Goulburn. Grew up in Lane Cove area, moved to southern New South Wales when I was about 4.5. My parents decided to go beef cattle farming, and that was a great period of our life, you know, young boys and horses and cows and, you know, freedom. It was a great time. And we then moved to northern New South Wales to go farming up near Moolumbar. And then during the sort of 4 or 5 years up there, we gradually sort of migrated to the Gold Coast. And I went to the Southwood School on the Gold Coast, which was a transformative experience. It was a beautiful school, lots of activities. And having been in a small, you know, government primary school, it was just a, you know, showcase of things to do and adventures to be had. So I really loved school there. Ended up school captain, which I didn't expect, but it, you know, just played out that way. That was a really good leadership moment, I think. I realised maybe others see me as a leader, even though I probably just saw myself as a participant, you know. Just, you know, my parents always, you know, told me to give 100%, get involved, be part of the team. So that's what my brothers and I always tried to do. Then went to the university in Brisbane, Griffith University, worked at a school in Brisbane and a school on the Gold Coast. Went to the UK to do my master's degree in 20th century literature. I was an English teacher at the University of London, and then did a PhD at Cambridge and in educational philosophy, basically looking at philosophy of schools and how that plays out in terms of their religious values and priorities. And then came back and worked in Sydney, and then went to Perth for 9 years, and here I am back in Sydney. So it's been a long journey, but an incredible journey. It's literally been like a quest, which is what I talk to boys about. Like, you can stay at home and do the same thing for 50 years, or you can go on a journey, with your family or with friends and see what unfolds. And I think, that's been part of our faith journey as well.
And how many how many was your family?
Yeah, I've got 3 brothers, so 2 older and 1 younger, and we're very close. So we've pretty much grown up together and continued to be close. And they're all in different fields of business, real estate, town planning, surveying, that sort of space. So I'm the only one in education, unfortunately. Maybe I wasn't smart enough.
And you have a huge fascination for sports.
Yeah.
So can you talk to us about childhood? What was childhood like for you? The brothers running around. What did you see from mum and dad? What were some of the principles they instilled in you for you to be free in that?
Yeah, look, I think mum was artistic. She was a sporty girl as well, but I don't think that was a priority for her. But dad was a good sportsman. He went on and played country New South Wales rugby, good squash player, and cricket player. So he enjoyed sport. So, again, when we were living in country towns, we were always part of the local rugby league team or, tennis team or whatever it was going on at the time. So that was just part of what you did. I think when I went to the Southport School, with similar to Scots, a very structured sporting program, good coaches, I realised, I was pretty good at some sports. I didn't have the advantage of my brothers. My 2 brothers are still like 6'1", 6'2". I'm like 5'9". So I was the shorter guy, but I found because of that, I probably had to work pretty hard. You have to be fitter, be stronger, put the training in. And I think that work ethic was something, again, my father instilled in me, that you can have natural talent, but you've got to put the hard yards in, basically, to perform. So I remember as a rugby player, 2 years, first 15, I went on and played, Queensland under-21s and first grade rugby in Brisbane and rode a bit as well after school. But I can remember coming home from school and just, throwing rugby balls, 1,000 times against a spot on the wall just to get my left and right hand pass. I was a scrum half, get a left hand and right hand pass right. So, it was one of those examples. You read books about people who talk about, the 5,000 hours they put into perfecting their table tennis shot or their tennis serve. And I think we shouldn't underestimate that. Your brain has this incredible ability to wire itself to your physical behaviours. And I think, repetitive skill development in sports, something that anyone can do. You don't have to be a super talent, but if you can throw a ball, kick a ball, get your balance running right. You don't have to be the fastest or the biggest. You just got to know you can do what you've practiced when the moments come. So I think I was one of those players probably.
And that's why I like to really go back to the past, is because that's so powerful. I think of myself as an athlete as well, kicking, same thing in football, kicking that ball against the wall, and then you're trying different touches, different foot. I made a mistake. I'm making a mistake. Let me try again. Let me do it. And that repetition, and you fall into this state of presence, like bliss in the unknown. But what I noticed is because of that, you've been able to build those principles and philosophies. Like, it's compulsory to go to play sport here.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
That's powerful. Not many people oversee that.
Yeah.
But it's those principles that you're talking about now that relate. I'm in the business field. This is easy for me.
Yeah.
I've come from playing football. I still do. I come from that thing. So when I come and do this, I'm waking up 4 or 5 in the morning and I'm still working.
Yeah.
So like those principles that you've laid and from what you experienced, powerful.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things Dad taught you?
Dad was always a very ethical and moral man. Like, that was really important to him.
Hi all, this is Nish, Director, CEO and lawyer from Professional Visa and Education Services. This is a quick review on the job that the Rubasha family has been doing with us, and we've been working together for almost a year now. I've been receiving a lot of support from himself, just the dedication and commitment for him to come to our office once a week, every week, and just spending that time understanding the nature of the business we do, also engage with our team members, and also trying to understand the service and the product that we provide to our consumer. I think that has been the great value add for us whenever we're making a video, because it's not about just making a content, but it's about making a content by the content creator, which is more connected to their client. You have done the good job, mate, and keep up the good work.
He came through his high school years here at Scots in the late 40s, mid to late 40s, which were the Second World War years. And, they were not allowed to put their hands in their pocket. They were not allowed to, to swear. They were not allowed to be disrespectful to anyone or anyone's property. They didn't steal. They were just drilled on that. And I guess there was a dominant culture where that was quite important as well. So for us, that was really important. I mean, there's one standout moment that my brothers and I often laugh about, and this is a story worth telling, I think, is that, we lived out of town. It was probably a 35-minute, 40-minute drive to go into town. So I think after a football game one day, Dad had picked us up and we stopped at the little general store, and they had these jars full of lollies, and we'd go in and, back then you'd have 10 cents, or 5 cents, and you'd buy 5 cents worth of lollies. And we'd gone in and given them a little bit of money, and they'd given us change back and given us the lollies. And when we got in the car, we'd driven for 10 or 15 minutes, and my older brother, Craig, said, "Oh, Dad, they've given us more change back than they should have." And he said, "Oh, that's great." And Dad said, No, that's stealing. That doesn't belong to you. That belongs to them." And he turned around and drove back and made us go into the store and say, "I think you've given us too much change here." And so fast forward, when I was 19 and my brothers were like 22, 21, and we were backpacking in Europe, and we had one traveller's check left. Right? We were stuck in Europe. We'd been really low on money. We were washing dishes in restaurants to get our meals every night. And I went into a bank in Rome and I cashed this last traveller's check, and it was $100 check. And the teller, when I got outside and counted the lira, he'd given me $1,000. So we sat down on a fountain and said, "This could be a miracle from God." And we all said, "What would Mum and Dad tell us to do?" And so we agreed. We remember that story of the lollies, and we said, "Let's go back in and tell them they've overpaid us." And we went back in and said he'd given us too much money. And then we pretty much struggled on $100 for the next week and tried to survive. But, the little seeds like that, as you were saying before about legacy, they're the things when the pressure comes on, the temptation, the challenge, to take shortcuts and things like that. Those values kind of get embedded in your heart and mind. I think they're really important. I think, mums and dads should never underestimate the significance of just having a few really clear, simple values that you can impart to your child, and, to help them to be ethical. So I think, mum and dad particularly, is really strong on that. And, I'd like to think we're all pretty good men. We're good dads. We've got good wives and kids, and family was really important to us, and that was something that mum and dad really emphasised, that family was the first structure that you protect and look after. And fortunately, we've all been able to go through and have, really happy married lives and grandkids and great grandkids and things like that. So it's been nice.
How now, like, and throughout your life, because when I hear that story of your father, it's also very intentional, because a lot of parents may not even realize the things they say around their children, what they accept. Let's say if your father, maybe he knew it was wrong, but maybe he didn't say anything. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But even that, something small, the children maybe, okay, so maybe it's okay.
Yeah.
But him turning around is very intentional.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of parents may not have that intentionality, because, we all go through things in our lives.
Yeah.
So how have you been able to raise your children?
Learning, you do learn from your parents and your grandparents. And, I think I have tried to be deliberate on some things. I think things like not calling adults by their first name from my children has been something that was instilled in me. It's not until you reach a certain age and that person actually gives you permission that you call them Mr. or Mrs. And so, that's something my kids all grew up. They were all taught to shake someone's hand. Dad had another great thing where, he always talked to us about looking people in the eye when you greet them. And I remember him explaining, sitting on a cattle yard fence, that it doesn't matter whether you're wealthy or you're poor in life, everyone has equal value and in the human race, and that by looking someone in the eyes, you're giving them equal standing to yourself. You're not looking down on them, you're not looking up to them. And so handshake, you look in the eye, saying good morning, Mr. such and such, was a little thing that we've done with our family. And just little disciplines, I think, like, keeping things tidy, respecting property. I think sometimes we can be a bit casual around children. And I think young children really need the boundaries. So, they'll just play and keep pushing to wherever until someone tells them to stop. And they don't really know where to stop, It's a bit like going to a supermarket. If someone says you can go into a supermarket, but you can only grab food out of aisles 7 and 8, then the child will go in and grab food out of child 7 and 8. If you go into the supermarket and you can get anything, they'll run all over the shop and grab whatever. So I think that can actually be quite confusing and distressing for children. I think as they mature, you can gradually sort of broaden the boundaries for them, and they feel quite safe in that. And I think a lot of children, a lot of the anxiety now is we've taken off all the boundaries, and they're really not sure what they should do in certain circumstances, and that's quite distressing, I think, for a lot of them. Some people get high levels of anxiety when they don't know how they're supposed to act, or what's going to get them into trouble and what's not going to get them into trouble. So, I think we're doing them a disservice, and that's why I think grandparents have a great place in this generation. I think grandparents, grew up in that era where there was a little bit more structure and everyone wasn't as concerned around wealth generation, and there was a very strong community focus. And I think, the influence of a grandma or a grandfather, speaking into a child's life is quite profound, I think.
I think that's powerful. And I think, like, for example, something like this, right? Imagine having a podcast with your grandson, granddaughter, and having these type of conversations. But I think, starting that as a family is quite powerful to those generations. So let me ask you, in this day and age, right, as a leader at this school, what we just talked about, right, with anxiety, how do you lead? How can you direct, the children from the ages where they are till they leave this school, with the systems that you have in place to go into this world with those principles and values?
Yeah, I think it's getting harder because we have lots of different cultural backgrounds, and there are different standards and expectations in different cultures. There are different, families and structures within families where there are different guidelines. So when you come to a school, the school's almost become like the central hub that brings that diversity together and tries to make it one and tries to create a sense of kind of unity and belonging. So I think what I've tried to do is create a school culture, a set of values, and a set of, guidelines and consequences that help us to understand who we are together and what we need to be together in order to function well as a community. And hopefully that the boys will take some of that and reshape the communities that they may be responsible in time. I think what you have to do with that, you have to name those things, you have to teach those things and explain why, because often they're challenged, especially young adolescent boys love to challenge anything that you put in front of you, but that's a good thing, right? Challenge is great. It helps you articulate and refine what you're doing, and then you have to maintain the lines or the boundaries, and that's the hardest piece, because that's where you have fights with people, and nobody wants to have a fight. So we don't talk about punishment here. We talk about consequences, and so if the view is you don't walk along and throw your food on the ground, because that would be disrespectful for the person who is employed to clean in this college, who has to pick up your food, because what that is an expression of you thinking that you're more important than them, and that we would want to honour them. So we're going to put as much food as we can in the bin to make their job as easy as possible, so that they can polish windows rather than pick up floors. So that's a kind of example. And then when boys breach it, you pick them up, and then a consequence may be, well, they get to miss a lunchtime break, or they get to do some work around the college to help them reflect upon what it is and why they're doing that. So, there are lots of little things around classroom behaviour, sporting teams, when you're away on camps and things like that, they have guidelines and consequences. And ultimately, I've had students in my life and my experience across a number of schools where I think the best thing that's ever happened to them has been an absolute shock, because they have pushed boundaries, and they felt that they would never, they were beyond consequences. And sometimes you've had to take away the thing that they've loved. And at the time it hurt, but you see them years later and they reflect back on that and say that was the best thing that ever happened, because it was a wake-up call. It made me realise I was selfish and, I didn't care about other people. And when you took it away, I realised that I had to change my behaviour. And I think we shouldn't shy away from that. I think we're very frightened nowadays that if we have consequences for behaviours, that somehow it'll impact students' mental health. I disagree with that. I think if you build resilience over time, then you'll be able to handle that. You won't fall apart when something goes wrong, or you make a mistake and you have to pay the price for it. That's what happens in life, right? Life's not, a golden roller coaster that you just cruise through without any problems or challenges. You have to bounce back. I think for me that, going back to our earlier conversation, I think that's something I probably learnt from my dad in particular, was just the ability to bounce back. And I think nowadays we define that as resilience, but it was like, if you get knocked down, don't give up. Work out why you got knocked down, go back better the second time and see if you can push through. And I think in this job, for me, over my last 18 years here, I think that's been one of the things that would define my leadership, has been my ability to, be confronted by some pretty horrible situations, things where I've felt like walking away because it's just too hard. But I've remembered why I'm here. And it goes back to that, like, I'm here for the boys. I'm here for the next generation. I'm doing a work that I believe I'm called to. So just get up, go back and have another go. And I think that's a great leadership quality, but it's hard. It takes a toll sometimes, and the best way to protect yourself from some of those challenges is to be surrounded by a handful of really good people that you trust and who encourage you, and also call you out if they think you're not being very wise or smart about the decisions you're making. I think that's having good people who speak in your life is a very important thing, especially for men. I think women are really good at doing that. I think men maybe not so good, and we should work on that. It's a key part of keeping yourself accountable.
I think this conversation is so powerful. Reason being, like you said, the state of where we are in society. Like you talk about consequences. We're living in a day and age where people want to coddle people, right? Oh no, don't put them through this, but that's actually making things worse, right? We're living in a day and age where we're losing that masculine essence to be in there, to have your principles, morals, values, and stand by. I'll give you a story when you talk about consequences and how it relates back later in life. When I went to school, the presentation was always so important, right? The way you have your tie, is your shirt tucked in? Yeah. At the time, I probably didn't see the value in it. Yeah. My dad, and from his, family, that was an important thing. His dad would always instill the presentation. My dad would go into an interview for a truck driving job, and he'd go in a suit. Right? Who goes into a suit in the truck driving job? So, yes, dad would say those things, I go to school, and we'd get in trouble here. If your shirt was untucked, 10 years later, I'm in the business world. I stand out in the room every single time because of why? Yeah. The presentation. Yeah. Yeah. I see these school kids. I was coming here and they're in the tie. I look and I said, that was what it was for. Yeah. That's what it was for. And that's what we're talking about. That essence as a young man, to come in, to present yourself well, to speak well, to have that resilience. That is what you've been thinking about for a long time. Yeah, but they're all, important but small pieces of a puzzle. About how do you develop formation? How does a person flourish and grow and develop and position themselves? With confidence in the future, and those things are important. Dress is an interesting thing in that people see you before they hear you, and we can't help it. We're designed in such a way that we do make judgments about people, and I think there's a really good thing now that we have challenged ourselves as a society not to judge people because of the color of their hair or their skin or their weight or anything like that, but to look for their personality. That's a good thing. But that doesn't mean you don't take pride in yourself and present yourself well. And, there's lots of different ways you can present yourself, but, you look good. You look sharp today. It's something I've always tried to do. I always loved art. I think that was my mother's side coming in. I was good at art at school and how important that is. I think humans function better in an environment that's attractive and beautiful and well designed, and that's why we love sitting on mountains and looking out on a beautiful creation. There's a sense of beauty there, and I think that's in it, and that comes out in your dress sense. So for me, it was always try and make sure you've got clean shoes. Make sure you're wearing a decent suit. It doesn't have to be expensive, but get one that fits you. Take an interest in the ties you wear, and the shirts you wear, and things like that. So it's a little bit of your personal brand, I guess, as well. I tend to take the view as a school principal that I think there are a couple of things really important. Number one, gardens are really important. When you walk in a school in the front gate, if you see carefully manicured gardens, that immediately gives you a sense that someone in this school cares about detail. They care about things being clean. They care about things being well presented. And then if you meet the staff and they're well presented, you get another sense of these people are disciplined and this is an orderly society. I've got a great friend who often
chat and we're talking about, you know, chaos and things going on, he always sort of says, God is a God of order. And, you know, not disorder or chaos. So I think as a Christian man, as a Christian leader, trying to create an orderly society that's well managed, that's as calm as humanly possible, so that people can sort of live and flourish in that environment, is sort of part of my work as well. Not just being focused on academics, but, you know, the physical space you live in and operate in is a kind of third teacher in many ways.
Yeah, I heard a quote, it was cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yes.
Yeah, that was Mary Wesley. She was John Wesley, the great Methodist leader, and his brother Charles Wesley, who wrote a lot of the hymns that, you know, have been sung through the generations. Their mother was like fastidious on cleanliness, and that was her mantra. And when you look at both of them, like, they were super disciplined, they remarkable lives, you know, just incredible people who reached thousands and thousands of people around the world. So something about cleanliness.
Yeah, quite powerful. You talked a little bit about personal brand, you know, and a lot of what we do as a social media marketing agency and is the personal brand. What makes me come to you? What makes me pay you than this person, right? And a lot of that comes to that personal brand, who you are. Interesting, when it comes to marketing, how do you market more people to come to here than, let's say, competitors to someone else down the street? That's very interesting, I think, in this school sector. So talk about that. What makes you guys different?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. That was like the first question I asked when I came here. I remember sitting in a few parent interviews and some parents have said, oh, we're thinking about you when we're looking to other schools. There's not much difference between your schools.
At ETS Rubasha Media, we help you become an industry leader. How? Well, we manage your podcast. A podcast is one of the most powerful ways for you to get your voice out there authentically, so you can teach and be an expert in your industry. And so once you have a podcast, once you're able to document like we're doing here and be able to put that into the marketplace, it positions you as a leader. Now, what we do with that is now we position our CEOs to be speakers, right? So you could just be doing what you love, working on your business and speaking on workshops, having speaking engagements, hosting workshops. So we have an availability once you become a client here at ETS Rubasha Media, whether we're managing your podcast and your personal brand, to be on the list of one of our speakers. So now you can get booked for speaking engagements. If you want to apply for that, if you want to apply for this select few clients who we can be represented out in the world, so we can market you speaking to so many people, being that industry leader, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger. It's the only way you're going to be an authority. People want to see you in front of other people. In their mind, they see you as someone who is important, someone who is valuable. When you become highly valuable, you become highly remembered, and you become highly paid. So you can become here represented at us, so we can be marketing you out there in the world, just like we do for our clients. You do have that opportunity. So if you want to get in touch for that opportunity to have your podcast managed and be put up for a speaker, connect with us below. Thanks.
I remember walking out of one interview going, there should be a huge amount of difference. We are nothing like those other. If you go back and look at what our founding fathers were hoping to achieve, and what our heritage is and what we've done over time, how did we ever end up in a place where people couldn't differentiate us from others? So the exercise there was to go back and rediscover our story. You know, where did we come from? What was valuable? What were the drivers that made, you know, a group of men sit in a cafe for years and think about a boys' school and what sort of boys' school it was going to be, and how did the Scottish heritage and the values and priorities that Scotland following the Scottish Reformation had on the type of school and universal education. So all of those things, as we put that together and pieced it together, it gave us a shape around the types of values and the types of language that we should be using to describe us. So one of the things, you know, when you look at us, people tend to talk about us having a really strong brand. And so that brand is around the words we use to describe ourselves. So we've got things like Brave Hearts, Bold Minds. Now, it's a little bit of a play, right, on Bravehearts, the movie, but it also says something about our program, which is holistic, right? We're not only focused on academic outcomes. We are focused on the spirit, the heart, the character. So we tend to know that if you hope to be successful in life, there are a lot of smart people out there who are not successful because they actually don't have the character necessary to take on the challenges to apply their smarts. So it was about, there's a purpose in that goes back into our philosophy. There are things like the finest preparation for life or Fine Scots Boy. That came out of a humility. We didn't want to say we're the greatest school. We didn't want to boast or brag. We wanted to demonstrate humility and kindness. And we thought about how does someone describe a person that they've just had a conversation with at a train station, and they tend to say that's a really fine young person. It's a point of praise and recognition that they're gentle, they're refined, they're thoughtful, they're kind. So that word fine was a word that we grabbed and sort of embedded into our language here. And then we sort of developed our key statements. We taught our staff that. We basically had to drive that pretty hard through the culture. We got a company in to help us on our branding, to do that side of it. So all of that's now sort of well and truly in place. And I think, here we are, it's a couple of decades later, but there's no way people would say we're the same type of school as, a school down the road. They would see us as a choice. Like, you either go to that school for that reason or you go to that school for that reason. And that's a good thing. If you trying to be all things to all people is the hardest thing to do. Mm-hmm. I think you just have to, pick the market you want to play in, decide on what it is that is valuable that you have to offer people, and then try and position yourself in that market and stay in that market until you believe it's time to move to another market. So that's the strategy piece that comes in. But branding is about having the courage to basically say, this is who we're going after. Like if you look at Scots, we've got 2,200 boys here come to Scots. So it's not all of Sydney. And we're not going after all of Sydney. We're not going after every child. We're going after 2,200 boys every year to come to Scots. And we want boys and families who love what we're offering. We don't want someone to come here who doesn't like it. So we want to be really clear up front. So where that comes to the personal branding side is you can do all of that around words and pictures and publications and things like that. But then you got to live the brand, right? So your personal branding is around thinking about yourself as a brand ambassador. Like, how do I present? So when people read about me or read about the college or read about my staff on the website, when they come and meet us, is there a natural alignment around those things? So we try and make sure that when they come and meet us, it's even stronger. Like they get a clearer sense of this is who we are. We're a boys' school. We love boys. We champion the cause of boys. We think boys are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? It's our job to honour them and to set them up for life. That's what we're doing. Other schools do that for girls. Other schools do that for boys and girls. For us, we're a boys' school. We're located here in Sydney. We're non-selective. Like we don't just take academically bright boys. We take boys from all walks, and we try and make them the very best they can be. And that might be in art, it might be in music, it might be in sport, it might be academics, it might be all of those things. But it's about trying to teach discipline, structure, success in the small things, and then you build on that to get success in the big things. So branding is ridiculously powerful. It's about telling your story as simply and as clearly, as consistently as you can through as many channels as you can. And, that's what we try and do.
I think that's the art and science of it right there, that consistency. And it's so interesting how you say it, like, we're not just a school to market or education. No, when people think the way I also define personal brand is association. When I'm thinking about what school to take my child to, I want my child to become a fine young man.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I want him to be the most educated and smartest child in the world.
Yeah.
I want him to be a fine young man.
Yeah.
And those words, Scots,
Yeah.
the brave, so it's so true how I'm just thinking about this now. The words that you went and used were very intentional, coming back to the personal brand.
Yeah.
When they think of those words and when they hear those words, they think of Scots College. And I love how it's so niche. You're not attracting everyone. We're attracting the right people who align with our values.
Yeah.
It comes back. We have this show for CEOs. You were also a CEO chairing, many schools. When you came here, you just said it. It was about how can I instill this culture? One thing sitting down with so many CEOs, that's what I keep hearing. I instilled the culture, words. So what were some of the challenges you faced as let's say, as a CEO, as a principal? It's basically the same thing, right? You're leading. So what were some of the challenges that you faced when you were here? And then how well or how good have you been able to instill that vision and those principles onto other people and, the staff?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'd like to sort of preface my comments in not being critical of anyone who's gone before me, because I think, other leaders have, led in their own unique way and served for that period of time. But I think when I came in, I think there wasn't a focus that was as strong as it could have been. I think there'd been a level of mediocrity that had crept in around performance. So whether that was academic performance or sporting or music, that there was a little bit like, we'll give it a shot, but we're not really focused on being the best we can be, and even understanding what that could be, what that looks like. And so because of that, there wasn't the preparation. And as I mentioned earlier, you only become good at something because you do the work beforehand. And, if you want to become a good rower, you got to work for years on technique, on fitness, on mental strength, all that sort of stuff. So that doesn't happen because a week beforehand you decide you want to win. So I think there was something around that performance culture that needed to be addressed. And again, I don't think there was a focus on how we prioritize. And again, for me, I found that the college had been through a tough few decades financially, and they probably hadn't invested in the physical environment as well. So the school was looking pretty tired. It didn't have a lot of sort of imagery or, like pictures. Like there were no pictures on the walls, around past generations or other boys that have been successful, or different things. And yet they had been. So there wasn't a lot to celebrate. And for me, it was sort of taking all of those things, as well as I think some behavioural slackness. I think when you don't keep boys focused on striving for excellence, then they'll strive for whatever standard you set. And so if the standard is striving for being average, they'll become average. If it's striving for not trying at all, then they won't try at all. So the hardest thing I found was coming into an environment and basically saying, my standard's up here. And if my standard's up here, your standard's up here as well. That, like, this is not our goal. And so I think in those early years, there was a bit of criticism about that. There were people, some people criticised me. I was only focused on winning. And the fact is, I'm not focused on winning. I'm focused on being the most competitive you can be at any moment in time. And if that leads to a win, great. If it doesn't, that's great. You've given your heart and soul. We can't ask you more from that. So I think when you've been playing down in this space and then someone's asking you to step up there can be a lot of excuses. And that's where that resilience piece comes through. Like it took years of just pushing, not accepting excuses, finding people who wanted to come on the journey who really believe that's where we should be. And I had some amazing, staff join us. We had staff who were here who it was almost like that's where they wanted to go, and they just needed someone to take them there and encourage them to go there. So, I think culture then becomes, the way we do things around here. It's the ethos, it's the values, it sort of encapsulates the quality of experience that you expect, and it's usually very clear around what you won't tolerate. And I think when new staff and new students come into a school with a really strong culture, they usually come in and they look around and they get a feel for the place pretty quickly, and then they'll just start behaving exactly the way you're supposed to be behaving, because they go, that's the way you do things around here. So if you don't have a strong culture, then it's like find your own level, find your own standard, and they'll just find their own group of kids and do whatever those kids do. So we have to work really hard to make the Scots culture the predominant culture, and not a collection of little subgroups that are doing their own thing. And I think that's where that persistent leadership, the persistent messaging, persistent naming of excellence when you see it, and things that aren't excellent, but trying to be generous in that. I think sometimes there are people who try really hard, but maybe they can't deliver. But if they try, I love that, right? That's all I ask. Just put your heart into it. Give me your best. And if we're not successful, we don't win, that's okay. We'll work out. Maybe we'll pad our team out a little bit more, and we'll think of new ways of doing it. So I think, there's kind of the performance edge, but there's the cultural edge, and you've got to link those two together. And I think that's why one of the things that in our language I talked about very early is around excellence, but we actually talk about excellence through teams. So the idea is not every student will end up with an amazing, academic score or won't play for the top level sporting team or may not make the school orchestra, but they can do things together with other boys and try and achieve excellence together. So I think there's a life lesson in that one of the most important things you do in leadership is be really clear about your own weaknesses and be clear about your strengths, and play to your strengths all the time. Don't play to your weaknesses. Be humble enough to recognize that you need some other people around you to complement your leadership. So you're always developing a team-based leadership model. And that's true for me, right? I am not the strongest detail administrator. Like, I will not sit at my computer all day and run through spreadsheets, but I will make sure I've got some amazing people who jump out of bed every day and love doing that, right? And they know how to give me the executive summary. They know how to put that in front of me, which frees me up to kind of play in the space I want to play in. And I think that's a really good lesson in leadership. Sometimes I think, the concept of the hero leader of, I've got to be all things to all people and just do it on my own is not a great model. Sometimes it happens. You can get people who do remarkable things, but the trouble is with that, when they leave, there's a huge vacuum. There's no talent. And, one of my things, I guess, when I finish here, I'm hoping that there'll be such a deep talent pool here that it probably doesn't matter who comes in next, that these people will drive. They'll drive that culture and drive the performance, because they hand on heart believe that it's important and reflects the Scots College that they believe it should be. And the new leader will come in and put their focus and their tweaks on it, but hopefully that identity, that brand, those values will kind of last for a long time.
When you talk about the values, and when I came, I was on the other side there in offices, and I walked through the corridor, And I still remember those images. You talked about the heritage
Yeah.
early in this interview, and I got goosebumps because I was looking, and then from the history, 1930s,
Yeah.
you know, the suits,
Yeah.
the prime ministers, the esteem, the elegance, and so I was looking through, and I said, this is what it's all about. Right. So were you the one who had the idea to put those images?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
said, it wasn't there before, right?
No, it wasn't. So interestingly, my office used to be in that corridor, and that was the point of entry. So you went into that corridor. So that corridor, if you can imagine this long, 40-meter corridor, and it literally was just painted white. It had like grey, torn carpet. It had wooden lockers, fluorescent lights, and not a picture anywhere. I remember there was a sign, like no smoking or something, was sort of hanging off one thing on the wall. And so that was your first visual impression of Scots. You came through the gate, you walked in there, and then you turned right into my office, and it had like a bathroom. So you kind of went down this narrow corridor with a bathroom there, and then it had this timber, like an old train station, like a timber window thing. And my school secretary sat behind there and, wound the window up, talked to you. And I just walked in there and said, how do I sell this as a innovative, future-focused school? Like it just looks like a relic. And as I walked around the school, there weren't any pictures that celebrated the life of the school. And so my wife and I sort of went to the archivist at the time and said, can you just collect all the images that we've got through the history of the school? Just get all those images and show us what they are. And we went through them, and then we selected ones that reflected all the different dimensions of the school, like, drama and music and, famous people and sports and different things. Then we went to a company and asked them to retake them and blow them up, and then we put them in old frames. So the frames all look like they've been there 100 years. So and they're mismatched. So the idea is it's always looked like this. That was the feeling. So what happened with that corridor? I got a builder who's an old boy here, and I said to him, "We're going to be out of here in December." I said, "Can you strip this out and do this whole design for me? So when everyone comes back in February, they're going to walk in that door and go, 'Oh my goodness, what a change!'" Because that was going to be a statement about the future of Scots. That was going to be my quality stamp, what I value, and that was going to be the first place we started. So that's what we did.
Okay, guys, I have the stats right here, right now. 93% of you guys who are watching our videos are not subscribing. 93. So you're coming and watching all the videos, but you're not pressing subscribe. Well, that doesn't make sense, because if you want to stay updated to everything that we're doing, all the events that are happening, all the vlogs, all the amazing things that are happening, guys, if you see what's in the lineup of content, you're going to be like, I need to subscribe. So I'm just telling you a favor, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Rubasha Family Podcast, Sujira Rubasha, and Indize Rubasha. I know that might be confusing because I said so many names. Just subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the notification bell because we have so much on the way. Go!
And the kids came back and it was like, oh my goodness, completely different. And then gradually we've just taken that model and wrapped it all around the school. So when you go around, there's like, the school is just what we call a living history. It's like a story. And the reason that's important is I want the boys who are here today to realize that one day their picture's going to be on that wall. And they are making history as they walk around the school. And just like those boys did 40 years ago, 100 years ago. And, some of the other things that are fascinating is if you look at those pictures, like the first captain of our rugby team here was Chinese. How cool is that? Like 120 years, 130 years ago, Scots was a school that sort of welcomed Chinese families at a time when Australia was not particularly kind, to Chinese immigrants and Chinese people who'd been here for a long time. So, there are things like that are symbolic, that I put them there for a reason. The other thing we've done them in black and white and sepia. And if you look at the photos as well, there are some modern teams there. So there are some, teams that might have won a premiership or something like that in 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but they're done. They look like they've been there a long time. The idea is we're going to keep adding to this story as we go, and I've just got to keep building new buildings. The other one I've done, so I've got more space for more pictures. But pictures tell, a picture tells a thousand words or 1,000 stories. And I love the other thing I love about boys. I think boys are very visual. I think we're visual learners, and I think we like looking at things and pondering. I think boys. I don't think we give credit to the reflective nature of boys, how deeply they think about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And, so part of the reason of creating a beautiful school is, and beautiful gardens and pictures and buildings that have interesting features is you want boys, to sit down occasionally and just look at something and go, I wonder who put that there. I wonder why that's there. And I wonder what that person, because that's curiosity, right? And curiosity's the foundation of learning. If you're not curious, if you're not looking to think about why something happens and why they did it that way, then you'll never have the drive to go on and learn things. So, so I've tried to be pretty focused and pretty deliberate on shaping the physical environment.
Yeah, like when I came in today, it was like I saw a new place. Like, wow, like I went to school here, and I think that's what I love, that innovation to always, it shouldn't look the same as it was when I was here.
No, it should change.
It should change. The same as in the business, the way you use systems, the way you do things should change. But to be honest, that gave me goosebumps to see all those images and to, I'm looking here, what we're trying to create, that legacy, doing this, that is the history. And even I think it's motivation for the boys to be like, when they look at those images, how can I stand out in what I'm doing? Right? If I'm an athlete, or if I'm in drama and education, whatever it is, how can I stand out so much that I wasn't just a boy who went to Scots College, but I was this person who went to Scots, to really have that name for yourself. I think it's quite powerful. Just to touch on a few more things, you said you like to play to your strengths. What are some of your strengths?
I'm artistically focused, so I love literature and art, and the artistic side is quite strong with me, and I think over time I've worked out what I do well, and I think what I do well is I can visualize the painting that a lot of people can't see, and I know how to pull together elements from different disciplines in order to create something new. Like we never create anything out of nothing, right? It's not like there's zero. Everything we do is a modification or development on something else. But I think I've learned over time that if you want to approach a project or some challenge in some ways, then what does science teach us, or what does biology teach us, or what does mathematics teach us? Can you pull those threads together that help you create a clearer picture? So I think I think well. I'm very interested and curious in relation to the journey ahead. So I tend to be quite strategic. I'm often thinking 10, 20, 30, 40 years out, like in relation to Scots, like what's going to be happening to Sydney in 50 years' time? What will the transport system look like? How hard will it be to get to Scots? How much money will people here? What's the demographic of Sydney going to be? So for that, I'm thinking, okay, we need to be positioning ourselves now to make sure we're relevant for the people that will be here then. So the strategy is important. How you articulate that or describe that and pull that together over time is something I do well. I think I'm, one of my leadership strengths comes out as a maximizer, and apparently it's 1% of the population, but maximizer often tries to squeeze that extra 1% out of everything. So the bit of a joke around here, sometimes teachers will come in with a plan. Like, I'd really like to do this thing. And they know that whenever they sit with me and describe what it is they want to do, I'll go, well, yeah, but what if you did this? And what if you brought that person in here? Instead of just getting to here, we could actually get over to there. And so it comes back to that idea of trying to think quite globally around taking a good idea, trying to understand what the objections to it will be, but then how do you supercharge that idea to make it really distinctive? Because the reality is most people are doing the same thing. So I'm always trying to do something that's a little bit different to other people, because that's the creative side, right? I don't want to look like everyone else. I don't want to be like everyone else. And that partly comes from that philosophy. I think that was one of my great privileges of doing my postgraduate work at Cambridge in particular, was just learning to kind of think well about problems and issues and have a mental process through that. I think that's really helped me in my leadership. I think I'm relational in the sense of, I think people trust me who know me. I think there's some people who don't know me who probably, might second guess what I'm doing or misinterpret what I'm doing. But I think people who know me think I have integrity and honesty, and that I've got their best interests at heart. I think I try and model that all the time. Be kind to people. Like, life's not easy. So you can be brutal, but that doesn't make you happy or people happy. So I think that's a big challenge in leadership. In sometimes when you are a bit visionary, or you've got to be careful you don't become task oriented. Like, you can see the future and you just want to get there as fast as you can. And sometimes leaders who do that, they just leave a train wreck behind them. There's damaged people and broken relationships all the way because they're focused on the task. Ultimately, whatever we do as human beings, we're focused on the human community. Like, we were created to be together and to fight with each other and wrestle with each other and challenge each other. But sometimes you've got to slow down to take people with you, and I think that's something I've tried to do. Maybe not always successfully, but I'm very conscious of that in my leadership.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch on that a little bit. So you've had an amazing wife, Alison,
yeah,
who's been by your side.
Yeah.
So now I even have a question for you. So I'm in a relationship. I'm not married.
Yeah.
Yet. We've been together for 3 years, and my mind is just obsessed with this. I just can't stop thinking about it. I'm just go all the time.
Yeah.
Now, I am with someone who's supportive and who understands that vision. Yeah. So you just said it right. Some visionaries, it's just like you're so focused on your purpose. And for me, yes, my purpose comes first. Yes, I'm taking you on the journey with me. So how important is it for a CEO, for an entrepreneur, for a leader to have a partner who understands that? As I said, I am grateful that I do have someone who understands it, but how not only is it important for that, but how can I be better at being so obsessed with what I'm doing, I'm so obsessed, but still always, okay, and kind of mixing that together.
Yeah. That's a great question. The fact that you even asked that question says you're thinking about it and you're conscious of it. I mean, consciousness is a really important thing. I think some people are not aware of, the impact of their life on others, and they can do a lot of damage through that. I think it's really important that you have alignment. It doesn't mean that you are from the same background or have all the same interests, but around the core things, you're very aligned. I remember doing a marriage course really early in our marriage, and I remember one image, that came up strongly is how you want to finish your life with your partner. And it was an elderly couple with their arm around each other in a 3-legged race, crossing the finish line. And then there was 2 train tracks with, husband and wife on different train tracks trying to finish the life. So are you doing life together, or you are doing it in a parallel environment and then coming together sometimes? And I think, Alice and I are very different. She's very extroverted. I'm more introverted. You know, she is a risk taker. She loves life. She loves people. Doesn't necessarily like structure and things. I'm a lot more disciplined, but we complement each other, right? So we talk about that, you know, and you talk early about, you know, do you want to have a family? You know, what are your aspirations in life together? And I think for young men, I'll say this, I think young men become very idealistic and become very focused on success. But you have to define what success is for you. Like, success is not just your work. There's a leader, an English leadership writer called Charles Handy, and he talked about a portfolio and had you know, like a pie diagram, and said you need to sit down and look at your life in different phases in terms of this pie diagram. How much time will you commit to your work focus? How much time will you commit to your children or your hobbies, developing yourself? And so that, you know, I think for me, that's it. In the same way, if I just become really obsessed with Scots and don't spend time with my wife, and she decides that I'm no longer a husband worthy being with, what's the biggest risk to Scots and me? Is that she walks out, right? That's a huge risk. And that's a risk for families. If families break down, that's a huge disruption. So the fact is, you've got to invest in that early. So we're coming up to 42 years this year married, right? So we met right at the end of year 12. I think sometimes maybe there's an advantage when you're younger of, you know, getting to know each other and getting used to each other early. But I think it's something where if your partner believes in what you're doing as well, and you've got to decide, you know, are your careers aligned, or are they, you can, if you want your partner to take an interest in your work, you've got to take an interest in her work, because you've got to value her and she has to value you. And so that's hard work, right? Like, you got to work at that in the same way as you work at your job, and you can make anything work. So I think my key is you talk about that passion, you try and map it out a little bit and say, what have we got to do together? Like, Alison's decided she's not going to work at certain phases of her life because this job with our family was so time consuming that she, if she was working, it would have meant our lives were chaos, and then it would have been chaos for our kids and things like that. So I really appreciate that, the sacrifice she's made, but I also invite her into this space, you know, so she feels this is not just the work that I do. This is our work, and in some ways we're modeling, you know, to boys that, like, especially in a world where, you know, there's a lot of broken marriages and a lot of mistrust around marriages. Hopefully, we're role modeling that you actually can be married, you can live happily ever after, and I think our faith and values frame that as well. We've aligned, you know, we're very aligned around our beliefs, our values in terms of what's important in life. I mean, one of the lessons for a young man too, I've just had my first grandchild.
Wow.
So my son's called him Ian. So that's a great honor, right?
How old is your son?
He's like 3 months. So he's really new.
No, but your son.
Oh, my son is 33.
32.
Yeah. And, you know, when you get on a little bit and you see a life like that, and it comes back to your legacy concept, you start thinking about, like, what's going to be left behind. Like, all the other stuff is just going to disappear. People are going to forget what happened here and what happened thing, but they're going to remember the impact you had on those little lives over time. So I think when you're striving to drive after your business, I mean, that's you trying to be excellent at what you do and trying to influence and shape and contribute to society. But just don't do that never commit 100%. You cannot. If you do that, you'll be on your own. You have to realize that, you know, your mum and dad, you know, grandparents, invest in those people as well, and try and make it holistic. Try and do what Charles Handy said, make that your portfolio. Like, what's my portfolio look for? How much time do I commit to my parents? How much time do I commit to my brothers or sisters? And then over time, you'll find, when you're doing a startup or you're trying to get off the ground, you do have to invest a lot more. It's a hard time, but as you go on, it won't always be like that. But you do have to make sure you don't develop traits and habits that become habitual. And you see that with workaholics, right? They can back off and enjoy the success, but they don't, because it's a bit like smoking, right? They're addicted to it. You never want to be addicted to work. I think you want to be committed to your work, but not addicted. You need to be addicted to the people around you. The living out of your beliefs and values is really important, that you feel at the end of your life, you've put your hand on your heart and say, I've tried to live my life with integrity, and honor the people around me. I think that's the goal. Whether you've got a big house or a nice car, it's not going to matter. But it's hard telling a younger person that, because those things seem all important when you haven't got them.
Powerful. Just before we end off, you also have quite passion in the Indigenous community.
Yep.
Educating and really empowering. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And your passion and what you've seen in that space?
Yeah, interesting. We started this conversation where I grew up, and I grew up in Ulladulla. I went to Ulladulla Public School. I had a couple of mates down there at school I played footy with who were Indigenous, and I don't think I ever knew they were Indigenous, really. It didn't seem to matter that much. But, he was just a 5'8" and I was a scrum half. And, we got on well. And then as I went through, moved to Murwillumbah, again up in northern New South Wales, there are quite a few Indigenous communities around. A few of the boys who played in the local rugby league teams. I remember the names, like Tommy Appo and Bradley Garrett. Like, they were Aboriginal boys, played in the teams with us. And so you had Aboriginal boys, and then sort of through the high school years and into university, I really didn't meet many Indigenous, people at all. And it wasn't until I went to Western Australia and I was working in a co-educational Christian school over there. And the school was located in an area where there was quite a strong, visible Indigenous presence. If you went to the shopping centre, you'd see a lot of Indigenous families and young people around. And the school didn't have anyone in it that was from an Indigenous background. And also, at the year I went to Perth, only 4 students graduated year 12 in the whole state with Indigenous background. And I thought, that's an appalling statistic, that of all the money and time and effort that goes into schooling for Indigenous people, only 4 people graduated school. And I think they were probably all girls. We were praying about that. I actually met this couple from Kalgoorlie who had 4 boys, and they came to the school one day and said that they heard about me and some of the conversation I was having around Indigenous education, and that could I put their boys into the school. And so I said yes, and we've maintained our lifelong friendship, Marcia and Trevor. And so I graduated those 4 boys. One of them became the school captain, and he went on and represented Australia in a National Youth Roundtable and all sorts of things. Remarkable young man. Now a really strong Indigenous sort of elder in his community. But for me, that was the start of saying Aboriginal, children and families, number one, just need opportunities. They need opportunities to have access to good education. So my journey started there. I worked in Western Australia a little bit at some of the Christian Aboriginal community schools that are out in the more remote areas and did some work there. So I kind of developed my interest and understanding of their culture and what's important, you know, trying not to bring a white man's view on things, but sort of listening and building relationships and trying to understand. And so by the time I finished there, we had, you know, quite a strong program, and that had been just, we were a good school for Indigenous communities to come to. We'd struck up a couple of partnerships as well. And so when I came to Scots, the headmaster before me had had a dinner and had some people who wanted to start a program. They got a little bit of funding together. They brought a couple of boys in, and then the boys left straight away. So what I realised is that they had goodwill there and good intention, but we probably didn't have the structure and probably didn't approach it from an Indigenous perspective. But like fancy, you know, imagine bringing an Indigenous boy from a remote community who is not, you're putting him in here. It's like landing on Mars, you know, like that takes a lot of preparation, a lot of support, a lot of understanding and help. And so we put that structure together. We got some key staff in place. We really had a lot of generosity from our school community as well, old boys and parents, to make sure we could provide a really good program. So we went for quality, not quantity. So our view was, we want to make sure nobody fails. So if the family trusts us and makes a decision that their son's going to be away from home for possibly between 6 and 10 years, if they go on to university, then we need to make sure we put everything we possibly can in to support that boy and the family. So, you know, we have about 18 boys in the program, so 3 per year group in the high school. And, you know, we've had a lot of success. Only 1 or 2 boys haven't finished, and nearly all of those boys have gone on into university placement, police force, you know, work placements, apprenticeships and things like that. And they're out working and successful. And the other side of the coin for me was, just as I had had a really positive childhood growing up alongside Indigenous boys who were my mates, I wanted to make sure that the boys here at Scots who were not Indigenous had mates at school who did not, that they did not have a negative opinion about, you know, that they weren't buying into the narrative out there that the Aboriginal people might be lazy or they might be alcoholics. I wanted them to know that, no, they're their mates, right? They work hard at school, they work hard in their sport, and in their drama and art and everything else. And so that not only do we graduate a generation of Indigenous boys who will go on and lead their communities, we'll graduate a generation of non-Indigenous boys who are going to have a really positive appreciation and respect for Indigenous people as well. So I think that's what we've been trying to do. And we're currently partnering with an Indigenous primary school right up in the north of Queensland, trying to work with their teachers and build strong literacy and numeracy programs with them, sort of recognising, you know, we're very blessed here. We've got great resources and great people, and you know, we'll actually be better when we partner with schools that, you know, don't have those resources, don't have those opportunities, and hopefully we can extend our reach a little bit beyond Bellevue Hill.
Powerful. I just wanted to thank you so much for your time. To end it on that note is quite powerful in the work that you're doing, to be able to see people for who they are and to lift them up. I think that's what it is. You know, when I think about it, exactly like you said, you didn't look, you know, all so much as in the education. We came as a first generation African immigrant family. I remember our first interview here. I think I actually remember me coming in as, you know, I'm a creative mind, and I was very talkative and excited just who I am. You saw the potential in, let's say, my brother, in all of us as being athletes and being able to contribute in that way. You saw us as who we were. You saw us just like yourself.
Yeah.
And that was quite powerful. And so even for something like this, right, like this interview will be played on 20, 30 years from now, right? When people are choosing and searching up their school, they're going to come and find this interview. They can come in and spend 1 hour with you and you're in the room. Maybe you've finished from the school, but they can come in and see this and see the values that have been instilled for decades and decades. And I think that's why this is so powerful. And it's also a credit to you to come and do this interview. You know, you could have easily not done it. You're so busy doing so many things. But this is what we talk about innovation. To be innovative, right? A podcast. I don't know how many other private schools are doing something like this. To sit down with a student who went here. I don't think I've seen it. This is going to be, we're making history right here. A student who came in here, talked to you about who you are and how, you know, you're just changing lives through education, through life, through teaching boys how to be brave and be worthy of their forefathers.
Yeah.
So,
and you know, I'm going to finish on one point. We're living in the 21st century. Everyone's talking about this new concept of diversity. You know what? The scriptures end with this picture in the book of Revelations of people from all nations, all skin groups, all color groups, all come together in one place, you know, to glorify God and worship God. And I think for me, you know, diversity was not invented in the 21st century. We are all wonderfully and uniquely made, and on purpose, for a purpose. And I think by trying to embrace that through relationships, through being conscious that not everyone comes from the same level playing field, but sometimes if you can create equity by giving some people an opportunity or a lift, then you can actually, you know, have remarkable impact over time. And you know, I loved your mum and dad when first time I met them, just their energy and their passion for boys, for you and Ian, and you came in here and you were different, but I love different. You put your heart and soul into the place, and what a difference. You're going to go and be a world changer because your parents had the courage to ask, and I had the opportunity to support that asking, and you're just paying that back in spades. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And also on that, you know, even just your competitiveness when we first met, you're talking about the football team, and you said that ever since your brother was here, we haven't kind of won a GPS, and you see that competitive nature, like you were talking about. People say, oh, maybe you want to win too much, but I think that's something that we always related with as well.
Yeah.
You know, even me when I was here, that the passion in sport and winning, and still to that day in what we do, it's that. I think it's what drives, you know.
Yeah. Always love competition, right? You just love it.
Cool.
I love going out into battle.
Yeah.
And taking on a challenge and testing yourself against a challenge. So that's what we've got to do in education. Kind of lift the bar, expect more, and then put the supports in place to help people thrive and flourish.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to catch up.
Yeah.
If you really enjoyed this video, make sure to click here, and I'm sure you're going to love that one.